Overnight, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade confirmed the death of 2 Australian citizens in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. The Australian Embassy in Beirut stands ready to provide consular assistance to the family if required. We are aware of the announcement made by Hezbollah claiming links to one of the Australians killed. We are seeking to establish the facts. However, Hezbollah is a listed terrorist organisation under Australian law. There is daily military activity in southern Lebanon, including rocket and missile fire as well as airstrikes. For Australians in Lebanon, we urge you to leave while commercial options remain available. In the context of the current conflict, Australia has consistently called for civilian lives to be protected, and we have consistently raised our concerns about the risk of this conflict spreading. It is why we have been working with countries who have influence in the region to prevent further escalation, and it is why we have been advising Australians not to travel to Lebanon.
Is the Australian government aware of this person's links with Hezbollah before that statement came out?
We are continuing to make inquiries, but I'd repeat, Hezbollah is a listed terrorist organisation under Australian law. It's an offence for any Australian to cooperate with, to support, let alone to fight with a listed terrorist organisation like Hezbollah.
Is Australia aware of this ban on anyone and any other Australian citizens having links to Hezbollah?
Well, we will continue to make inquiries about this particular person with whom Hezbollah has claimed links. Of course, there are examples in the past of Australians having had links with Hezbollah. One of the reasons why the Australian government has listed Hezbollah and in both its arms as a terrorist organisation is because of the potential links to Australia and Australians. We're continuing to make inquiries. Both of the Australians who've been killed are Australian citizens. It's important that the Australian government be as informed as possible when this sort of event happens.
Has the Australian government been able to confirm that they were killed by an Israeli airstrike?
As we understand it, that is correct.
Do you think Israel should have been more careful in this airstrike or this
What we have in the region at present, and what we have in southern Lebanon and in northern Israel, is continuing armed conflict. That's the reason why the Australian government urges any Australians who are presently in Lebanon to leave while commercial options are available.
Has the government made any representations to Israel about this in relation to this death?
We've communicated with the Israeli government, obviously.
And what was said?
I'm not going to disclose those communications.
What are the consequences for Australians who are found to have been fighting with Hezbollah? Any Australian fighting with Hezbollah is committing a very serious terrorist offence under the criminal code. There are very heavy penalties attaching to committing that kind of offence, and I'd repeat, because Hezbollah is a listed terrorist organisation, it's an offence for any Australian to provide financial assistance to that terrorist organisation, to fight with that terrorist organisation, or to be associated with it. If people in question are dual citizens, is it possible for them to lose their Australian citizenship?
Our government dealt with the regrettably unconstitutional laws that were passed by the former government that provided for the stripping of citizenship in certain circumstances. Just before the Parliament rose this year, we put in place what we believe to be a constitutional law that provides for the stripping of Australian citizenship from someone who has been convicted of, among other things, a serious terrorist offence.
that stripping of citizenship constitutionally is required to be by a court, and it will be something that will potentially arise in the future on the sentencing of someone for a serious terrorist offence. I'm personally not aware of any such reports.
And what's your message to anyone who would be thinking about doing this?
Don't. It's very important that Australians not travel to Lebanon. The reason why the Australian government has listed the whole of this organisation, Hezbollah, and a number of other terrorist organisations as terrorist organisations is to provide a deterrent to Australians from giving their assistance to or joining with, let alone fighting with, terrorist organisations.
To clarify, at this stage, has the Australian government confirmed that he was a fighter for Hezbollah?
What I've said in my opening statement is that Hezbollah has claimed this Australian as one of its fighters. Our inquiries are continuing.
Can I also just clarify that the two that were killed, were they both brothers? I understand there was a woman killed as well. What was her visa status?
There are two Australians who have been killed, and a third person has also been killed. Our inquiries are continuing.
The families here in Australia say they're very angry and devastated by the news of the deaths. They've asked for a government response. Does the killing of an Australian citizen by Israeli warfare warrant any kind of government response?
I've given a very, very clear response on behalf of the Australian government, which is to make the point that there has been a travel warning not to travel to Lebanon in place now since mid-October. It remains in place. Australians should not travel to Lebanon. Australians in particular should avoid conflict zones. Southern Lebanon is a conflict zone, and the Australian government urges any Australians who are still in Lebanon to leave while commercial options are available.
On another matter, has TikTok breached Australian privacy laws by harvesting Australian data from websites without seeking their consent?
The Australian government is very concerned to protect the privacy of Australians and the privacy of Australian children. We are very pleased that the Privacy Commissioner, who is the Australian official charged under the Privacy Act with investigating privacy breaches, has commenced an investigation. I'd make the point that we've shown how seriously we take breaches of Australians' privacy by last year legislating to increase the penalties, massively increase the penalties for breaches of privacy by corporations, and we've also at the same time legislated to give additional powers to the Privacy Commissioner. I expect that the Privacy Commissioner will be using those additional powers in this investigation.
And what would your message be to TikTok?
To cooperate with the Privacy Commissioner in her investigation. That's something that all Australian companies should do, and particularly TikTok, when serious allegations of this nature have been raised, that we expect that TikTok will be cooperating fully with the Privacy Commissioner. We've got some competition there from a whippersnipper. After a decade of inaction under the former government, where Australians were left unprotected and ill-prepared for the technological changes that pose a threat to the privacy of Australians, we've acted. We've acted to increase the penalties in legislation last year. We've acted to give additional powers to the Privacy Commissioner, and I have published the government's response to the largest review of the Privacy Act in many, many years. I'm working now on legislation to bring appropriate reforms to the Privacy Act to the Parliament in 2024. We have published a very, very extensive review of the Privacy Act conducted by my department over the last couple of years. and these sorts of reforms are all under active consideration. We've got very extensive reforms that are needed to give effect to the kind of protections that are needed against the technological changes that we're all now having to confront.
Just one more on the brothers who died. Noting that one of them, there's no suggestion that he was a Hezbollah fighter, will you express your condolences to the family?
We've expressed, of course I express my condolences to the family of the man who's travelled to Lebanon. I say again, as I said in my opening statement, that the full assistance of Australian consular officials in Beirut are available to the family. Thanks very much.